Doom Nation, what is up? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Two Doom Men podcast. As always, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. You can hear us where all major podcasts are found, and you can also find us everywhere Trump is banned. IG is at 2DoomMen_podcast, Twitter is at MenDoomed, and our Facebook is at 2DoomedMen. And the fastest way to find us everywhere is through linktree.com/2DoomMen. Thank you, Doom Nation. Have a great day.
This country is doomed. It is doomed.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Founded by men of many nations and backgrounds.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff.
All right. What's up, Doom Nation? It's Skags here, and welcome back to another episode of the Two Doom Men podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, the great Scott Horton.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. So first of all, Scott, I just want to thank you, man, for taking the time to come on with me. This has been a crazy week, and I'm sure for yourself, it's been crazy. I'm sure I've seen a lot of the things you've been doing this week. I've seen you on Kennedy the other day, doing a lot of the rounds. So thanks for spending some time with me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it.
So obviously I want to talk about Afghanistan, and I kind of want to pick your brain on the situation. But I kind of want to start first at the very beginning to kind of lay the groundwork to understand the whole situation better. So, you know, my understanding of the situation in Afghanistan, you know, way back then, I was in the 7th grade, and after 9/11, obviously Al-Qaeda attacked us, and our goal was to get revenge on Al-Qaeda, to bring bin Laden to justice. And I remember from the time hearing that bin Laden was hiding out in the Tora Bora in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go over there to get him. And, you know, I was just in the 7th grade. What did I know, right? But looking back on it now, we were there to get Al-Qaeda. How did we end up embroiled in a 20-year war between the Taliban and the Afghanistani people? How did it go from bin Laden in the Tora Bora to 20 years dealing with the Taliban?
I know it's absurd, right? And let
Yeah.
me tell you something. It's not just absurd in hindsight from the year 2021 deep into the future when we're having this conversation.
Yeah,
But way
like I
back
said.
then in the present, this was completely crazy.
Yep, I was literally just in the 7th grade at the time. So here I
Yeah,
am now. I'm
so-
32 now.
Yeah, well, it's the past for you, but it's still going on to me. I'll tell you what. Now, so here's the thing. My friend Shauna, as soon as September 11th happened, she says, "Oh, they're going to let bin Laden go. You watch." And I go, "Oh, no, they're not. They're going to kill him with a drone strike or whatever it is. They're going to bomb him. And then they're going to say, see, you can't mess with us. We got satellites and we're going to demonstrate, you know, how quickly and easily we can find our retribution against this guy out, even out in the wilderness somewhere, you know." And she says, "Sucker, no, they're not. They're going to let him go. You just watch." And of course, she was absolutely right. And I got to tell you, it's not like an ironclad thing with the sworn deposition where they admit that it's all true kind of deal. It's a circumstantial case, but I make it. It's in both books, Fool's Errand and Enough Already. That, you know, they did unleash some air power at Tora Bora, but I think they did that at the risk that they might accidentally kill the guy, but they did not do what it took to kill bin Laden and Zawahiri. And they're just a few hundred men that were with them there. And there are two great books about this: Jawbreaker by Gary Bernson and Kill Bin Laden by Thomas Greer under the alias Dalton Fury. And the former was the CIA commander on the ground. The second one on the ground there in charge. And then the latter there was the guy who was the Delta Force commander, I think a lieutenant colonel, who is or a colonel. I think they promoted him on the spot, something like that. Made him a lieutenant. Anyway, whatever. Delta Force commander. So both of these guys write that they just absolutely could not get the reinforcements that they were begging for, and that they were available. There were Green Berets up in the north. There were Rangers, fighting with Dostum against the Taliban up there near Mazar-e Sharif. And you had the Rangers at the Bagram Air Base north of Kabul. And then you had more Rangers down in Kandahar, and also some Marines. General James Mattis, Trump's Secretary of Defense there for a while. Mm-hmm. He was the Marine general who had 4,000 Marines there, also in Kandahar. And he wanted to get into the fight and was denied permission to get into the fight. The Delta Force and the CIA asked over and over and over again, can we please have the Green Berets and the Rangers to help us get this job done? In fact, Greer writes, when they got there, their Delta Force Team B, Combat Applications Group, they change their name all the time, like from one thing to another. The Combat Applications Group, Team B, they get there, and their Team A's, Team 1 or Team A is getting pulled out of the country. And they say, and Greer says, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? We could use those guys, the other half of Delta Force, right. And they say, no, see, we're trying to psych bin Laden out, man. We're trying to make him think that we're quitting and leaving and withdrawing. And then he's going, well, yeah, but like, we could use the manpower, so right. There's that.
This all seems very counterintuitive to me. Like, if you're trying to get a terrorist, why are we not committing all of our forces or all of our intentions to getting him?
And I got to tell you that, listen, in both books, there's plenty that's obvious. Sure. But in both books, there's obvious stuff between the lines, too.
Okay.
Where this is what Greer is telling you, the reader, too. That like, and geez, there I was, mystified at this seemingly nonsensical decision. What could possibly explain it? I couldn't understand. Mm-hmm. And then you, the reader, are left to say, come on.
Kind of tongue-in-cheek.
What's going on here,
Yeah, he's making kind of tongue-in-cheek comments.
Yep. And then, in Bernson's book, it's all redacted. So you have, publishers do this sometimes. A former CIA officer writes a book, and he has to run it by the reviewers. And the reviewers redact some stuff. Then the publisher will run it with the black bars. Right. Because that makes it like a sexy thing for a sales point that like, oh, see, they deleted stuff out. Well, but go and read that original edition with the black bars in it, and you can see what it is that they're censoring out. And what they're censoring out is his discussion of how angry he is about the decisions to refuse to give him the GD reinforcements that he's begging for. Mm-hmm. And that's what's blacked out. And you can tell it's, he makes like 3 good points and then the fourth one ain't there. And you're like, man. So, and then what happened was they're forced to rely on local tribal warlords who just cut deals with the bin Ladenites there and went home every night. And essentially any ground that they gained, they gave up every day and had to retake again all over again the next day, and et cetera, like that. And then, on December 17th, they think must have been, that bin Laden and his group went this way, and there was another group that went the other way, and they all escaped, or maybe one was on the 16th, the other was on the 17th. And the Taliban was just the Delta Force was absolutely forbidden from following them. Mm-hmm. And the way that they put it on the time now, I bet I'd like to see the results of this. Like if you put it into Google, just how many results you get for bin Laden slipped across the border into Pakistan.
Right.
And then they say that like it means somehow there's this semi-permeable membrane that we are all to just somehow understand, even though they never explain it, that Arab terrorists can cross this line into our friendly nation state country of Pakistan that we have total cooperation with at this point. But somehow Delta Force can't follow them. And you're not even supposed to ask why. You're not even supposed to wonder why. You're supposed to take the word slipped Like it's this magic word that then requires and defies any further explanation at all. And so just that was it. They had to just quit. Meanwhile, the Delta Force had a plan. They had multiple plans to go after bin Laden and chase him across the border, even without reinforcements. And you can find this on YouTube. Thomas Greer, again under the name Dalton Fury, went on 60 Minutes. And he's wearing a baseball hat and a fake beard and all this stuff. And he goes on there and he explains that when they went this way and got across the border, we said, well, what we'll do is we'll get in our helicopters and we'll fly over the mountains and then we'll come at them from this side and have them cornered, you know, and come at them from the east. And then, nope, permission denied. Okay, well, I know what we'll do. We'll drop a bunch of mines in the valleys. And there's only like 3 valleys that the bin Ladenites can choose from to try to get out of here. And so we'll just mine those valleys. And at the very least, that'll slow them down. And there'll be mines going off. And, you know, maybe we'll be able to find them that way and track them that way. And whatever it was. And also, and they had a couple other plans, I mean to say there, which were all denied. But at the same time, it's in the book 88 Days to Kandahar by Robert Grenier, the CIA officer who was the station chief in Islamabad, that he had already set up deconfliction with the Pakistani Army and Frontier Corps separately. And that means to prevent friendly fire. We stay in constant communication with our friends about where our other friends are on the battlefield, so that our friends don't kill our friends, right? And so everyone expected that the Delta Force would be hot on Osama bin Laden's trail if he escaped and they didn't get him at Tora Bora, that they would be following him and catch him, but then they just didn't.
Interesting.
You know?
So
By the way,
it sounds to me like they just kind of let him get away.
I think so. And listen, I mean, the thing is, too, regular Americans didn't know.
Right.
But the U.S. government knew that bin Laden's hideout was at Tora Bora in the Nangarhar province. CNN had interviewed him there twice.
Right. I remember the old videos.
The Lion's Den. Yeah. And this is all very familiar CIA territory and fighting in the eastern Nangarhar province and all that going back to the 1980s. So in other words, if you and I had been in a position of W. Bush and Rumsfeld, that's the first place we would have dropped paratroopers, right? I would have said to you, Mr. Secretary, how many paratroopers do we have total in the U.S. Army? And I mean anybody who's ever been trained with a parachute before. And then you would tell me that number, and I would say drop all of them on the Lion's Den hideout at Tora Bora in the Nangarhar province. There's no other target. Who gives a crap about Dostum's problems in Mazar-e Sharif? And this is not just antiwar.com's point of view here either, by the way. You know, Condoleezza Rice, the national security advisor, and the CIA, led by George Tenet at the time, they said, let's just kill them. And I'm talking at the cabinet level, in the discussions in the White House and the National Security Council, in the Situation Room. They said, look, let's just kill Arabs. What the hell are we doing? We don't need to fight the Taliban. We're going to find bin Laden and his friends, and then we'll be done with that. And we'll let the Taliban see that we mean what we say. That, look, man, don't make me hit you. I really am not trying to have a fight with you. Stay out of my way while I kill your guests. And they could have stuck with that narrative, but no, that narrative was overruled. Right? Again, that's not what I'm saying I wanted to happen. That's what the CIA and the National Security Advisor thought was the right thing to do. Why bite off more than we can chew doing a regime change in the baddest badlands on the planet when our enemy's right there and getting away, you know? And I think you're right. I think, well, I've convinced you, but I think we're both right that yes, they deliberately decided to not do whatever it took to get the guy. And the explanation is they wanted to conflate Al-Qaeda with the Taliban, take the war to the Taliban, and then from that matter to go on to conflate the enemy with Iraq and with Iran and with Syria and with whoever that they want to demonize and say is tied to terrorism and fight wars in the Middle East. And so if bin Laden was dead it'd be pretty hard to frame Saddam Hussein for being a co-conspirator with him, planning to gas your mom with chemical weapons, right? So,
Right.
in other words, who cares if Saddam and Osama are friends if Osama's already dead? And if the American people think that didn't we win that war a year ago? I thought we already won that war. We already took our revenge. And we already got our justice, wanted dead or alive. We killed our guys.
Right.
So
It wouldn't
what's
be
the problem
possible
now?
to justify.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they say, listen, you should read this book if you got the time. It's called Bush at War by Bob Woodward, the Washington Post reporter that helped bring down Nixon with
Yes.
Watergate and all that. Most famous reporter in America, probably.
Yep.
So he had direct access to all of Bush's principles, which they spin a lot and blame each other and all these whatever it is kind of things. I'm not saying you can take their word for everything, but you know who's talking when you read it. They're like, Colin Powell told him this. You don't know that that's true, but you know that Colin Powell, you know it's true that Colin Powell told him it. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. But you also know that, you know, some of this stuff, a huge amount of it is direct quotes from the National Security Council, the minutes of the National Security Council meetings kept by the official, you know, classified note takers. And W. Bush just said, give it all to Woodward. We can trust him. He's a good guy. And they just gave all of this stuff to him. And so in there, he quotes at length. And, you know, Bob Woodward, back to reading between the lines, for the information that he brings there, his conclusions are very gentle, right? But boy, he lays it out right there where you're going to be hopping mad, where he's not hopping mad by the end of the page. You are.
Right.
Right?
Make your own determination.
Yeah, and I think he kind of leaves it that way too. There's a little bit of deadpan in
Mhm.
there where they're saying, listen, if we fail to get bin Laden, that's not failure. And if we succeed in getting bin Laden, that's not victory. And we have to make sure the American people know that this war is much broader than just getting the bad guys what done it. And Rumsfeld says, I think we need to start bombing Baghdad right now to send a message to the American people that this war is a much broader theater. It's the global war on terrorism. It's not the war on Osama bin Laden and his guilty friends who murdered us. Back, screw them. It's the global war on all this other stuff that we want to do.
Right. What's frustrating to me is that after all this time, I feel like they did definitely conflate Al Qaeda with the Taliban and then Saddam.
That's right. Even still to this day, they do. Yep.
And that's what's frustrating to me after 20 years of this and me, you know, becoming a pretty staunch anti-war guys. How do people not understand that yet after all these years?
Yeah, because they don't care.
I guess
it's all foreign words and weird stuff from far away. And so, you know, you got to take an interest in it to really know anything about it. TV will never tell you, right?
That's true.
It's just like with Israel, Palestine. And honestly, I quit watching TV a long time ago, but I'm sure this hasn't changed. The only time I ever saw somebody on cable TV news, much less any other TV news, say, all right, look, everybody, here's like 101 of who's occupying who in Palestine. Okay. This happened here. Then there's 67 war, and this is the West Bank, and here's Jerusalem, and here's the Gaza Strip, and here's the settlements and thing. That happened one time, and it was on MSNBC, and it was in December of 2016, after the election, when Obama was a lame duck. And he abstained from a UN Security Council resolution condemning Israel for colonizing the West Bank. Right? Wow, how brave of him. Anyway, and said he was supposed to veto it. And
he did a lot of those token actions, I feel, at the end of his presidency.
Yeah, seriously. So, but in this case, because it was spinning for Obama, they brought some guy up there to show a map and to show who's who. But here's my only point. That's the one and only time that ever happened, ever, at least since 1973 or something, before I was born, right? They just don't ever do that. And that's the same with all of these things. The only person, well, that's certainly not true. There are very few people who are on a mission to help you understand who's who over there and why they're doing what it is that they're doing, you know? And the real problem is that it's the paradox of, you know, our ancestors came here to be free and mind their own business. And this is the middle part of North America, way the hell over here. Eurasia And all of this mess is way over there. It's other people's, business and area and property and all that. But the problem is America's the world empire. And America dictates to the world with its world army from here in North America. And they make all these things our business, even though we're just trying to mind our own business and live our life. Many of us take it for granted that our government wouldn't get in a fight unless it was defending us, because we want to leave everybody alone and be left alone. So why wouldn't our government do that? We just kind of project that onto them, presume that that's
Right.
what it is. But instead, in a way, not that it's our fault, but in a sense, we have a responsibility, I think. It's everybody's choice to believe whether they think they do or not. I'm not like putting on someone else as their duty or whatever, but isn't it kind of right that we all have a responsibility to know enough to find out, figure out, and learn enough about these situations to know whether we should be supporting or opposing something like a foreign war?
Right.
You know what I mean?
The action of
Like,
killing thousands, millions of people. Right. Of
yeah,
course.
seriously. Like, how can you just be AWOL on that question and not really know at all? I don't know. War in Afghanistan might be worth it, might not really my thing. I think it kind of should be everybody's thing.
I agree.
And then,
I agree. People are disconnected, maybe distracted.
Yeah, you pay enough attention to it, and then you'll be on the anti-war side. Pretty sure. Same as if you learn about Israel
honestly,
and Palestine.
One of the reasons why I started the podcast was to, get into this stuff and try and make a even just a slight difference in any way I possibly could. And the more I looked into it, the more red pilled, I guess you could say, I got on everything going on. And that's how I kind of came to find guys like Dave Smith, Michael Malice, and then the more I've learned from you guys, my complete perspective on everything, especially regarding foreign relations, has changed. I feel way more libertarian than I ever have before over the course of the past year.
Man.
Yeah,
that's really great.
Let me pivot now to what's going on now, right? Because it's a mess, I guess you could say, no matter which way you look at it, or at least it appears to be a mess. There's some sort of fog of war going on with the media and social media, and the evacuation going on at the Kabul airport. And the main question I really wanted to ask you about the whole collapse here of the Afghan government. There was the peace deal in place of May in this year that Trump had negotiated, and Biden pushed it back to September 11th. At the time, I had covered this in our podcast. I didn't believe it. I thought for sure they were going to come up with an excuse as to why they had to stay longer. But I'm no fan of Biden's whatsoever. But I'll give him credit for actually following through. It seems like they are really trying to end this war. Now, the situation seems to be a disaster, like I said. Would there really have been any difference had they stuck to Trump's May 5th plan or to this plan that they were on now? Would have been any discernible difference between the two in the outcome?
Quite a bit, I think. The Taliban would be where they are right now. That part wouldn't be different. But we'd have been gone already before it happened. Right. So we still have the problem of the Afghan National Army giving up all their weapons and equipment and everything, and the Taliban taking it all over. But I think the Taliban had planned their offensive and, to go with the fighting season over there. And they stuck to their schedule.
Right. I see what you mean.
Yeah. And so the Americans had kicked their can down the road, but they hadn't kicked the whole war down the road, just their part in it. So, they delayed. And what should have happened is Biden on his first day in power should have called the Pentagon and said, listen, we're sticking with the deal. May 1st is the day. You heard me. I didn't stutter, and you can't change my mind. Now do your work, and that's it. Anything short of that, and he's screwing around because the Pentagon wanted to. So it may have been political reasons. Oh, I was saying it looks like the Pentagon were the ones, who pushed all that, but it could have also been political reasons that Biden didn't want it to be Trump's withdrawal. He wanted it to be his withdrawal, and to try to, for narrative purposes, make a clean break with Donald Trump's,
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely.
Yeah. But so that was a huge mistake. They should not have done that. And then, we're just talking about this one narrow issue about how the withdrawal was done. and I'm sorry because I keep giving the same interview to so many people. I
Oh, I
forget what I
understand,
already said
definitely.
and what I haven't. What he should have done, stop me if I already said this earlier today
Sure.
with you. What he should have done was declared up front that the entire project is bankrupt, that the government we have built there cannot stand, that the army that we have built there is a total joke. And therefore, we're evacuating all of our civilians and we are ordering our military to destroy every last bit of military equipment that they have left behind for the Afghan National Army. Now, think about what that would mean politically, right? All the hawks would be screaming their head off that the Afghan National Army is a failure because you're taking all their weapons away, right? And then the counter to that would have to be, no, sorry, sucker. The answer is, if we left this equipment with them, they would leave it in the hands of the Taliban.
Right.
They would give it up and the Taliban would get it. And we believe that that is a high enough likelihood that we're not even going to gamble on leaving it with the ANA, as bad as that looks, right? But the thing is, they couldn't do that because then they'd have to admit that the whole damn war was a completely bankrupt prospect, sort of up front before it falls. And that would have looked really bad. And they would have been blamed for undermining the government and the military, such as it was, obviously, to a great degree. So for political reasons there, instead of just telling the whole damn ugly truth, they decided to, continue with the facade that this Afghan government is a government and that this Afghan army is sworn to protect it and is going to fight to the death. As Biden put it in his speech 5 weeks ago, we built up a 300,000 man army. And if they can't fight to protect themselves now, well, tough, right? But that just wasn't even true at all. There's nothing like 300,000 men, and they were never going to be able to withstand the Taliban without American support backing them up.
Yeah.
So once that support was withdrawn, then the government immediately crumbled. And I didn't say that twice in the same interview. Good.
No.
And look, I said in my book 4 years ago this week, it was published on August the 16th of 2017 on page 209. Some guy on Twitter pointed out to me, it's page 209. I say this exact thing is going to happen. Taliban is coming back in force. They've got all of the strength with them. They rule most of the country, or half the country in the daytime and most of it at night. And they're not really a shadow government. They are the government of most of the country now, and they're coming. And conversely, the government in Kabul is a joke and a hoax and a corrupt menace, and has no popular sovereignty and popular support whatsoever. And as soon as America withdraws support from it, it's going to fall. And then the Taliban will take over outright, take over all of the south and the east of the country, and probably the rest of it too. And Kabul could fall very, very probably, or very likely, or something like that. I say Kabul will fall also in short order to the Taliban. All this was that obvious to me to make all those claims about the near-term future 4 years ago.
Yeah, to me, as the Taliban was advancing here, I'm no expert in military or the Afghanistan people, but it just seemed like to me they just weren't interested in fighting their countrymen and possibly dying with them. It seems like the takeover was, for the most part, pretty bloodless, I guess you could say.
Look, that's such an important point. The way the Americans frame this all the time, the whole time, was that the Taliban are like a foreign invading army from somewhere over on the other side of Australia somewhere or something, right? But no, they are not. That's where they're from. They're from Kandahar province and Helmand province and Nangarhar and a few others. I forget all their names, especially in the east and the south of the country there. And I guess, I don't know if the Taliban hail much from Kunduz. There's a lot of Pashtuns up near Kunduz as well. But they're from there. We're the invading army.
Right.
And then Biden says, well, look, if this army that we built, if they won't fight for their country, we no longer can. Well, I agree with the whole we no longer can part. Fine. You can call it whatever you want, Biden. Just end the damn war for our sake.
I feel the exact same way.
Right. But don't pretend that the job of the Afghan National Army was fighting for their country. Their job was fighting for our country.
Right.
They're, basically paid Quisling mercenaries fighting against their own countrymen at the behest and on the payroll of a foreign power. And that's why they had no morale. Those guys, the ones who weren't ghost soldiers, who were just, payroll padding, make believe men, but the actual soldiers who showed up, they just wanted boots and a rifle and a hot meal and get the hell out of there, man. The turnover rate, or the retention rate, the way that they put it, was just absolutely
it's a good job, like right. 3 hots in a cot, as they say.
Yeah. No, it's a good job for a week.
Right.
Until you can, you know what I mean? And then you go home and hopefully you stole enough stuff that you can sell and keep your family alive for another little while. But the retention rate was just absolutely through the toilet. Nobody wanted to stay. Nobody wanted to fight. Why would they do that? Be like if the Chinese tried to hire, what state are you from?
Connecticut.
Yeah. And they try to hire you to invade New Jersey.
Right.
Like, you might be starving enough that you have no choice but to fight for them for a little while, but is your heart in it?
No, right. My heart wouldn't be in it. Why would I want to go there? Right. And just start.
And you'd have to be hungry as hell to even make that. Yeah, you'd have to be in absolute poverty to make that choice anyway, right? To keep your kiddos alive.
Easier to just hunt some deer and grow some food than go and murder other people.
Yeah, more likely. Reason. That's right. More likely join up with the people in New Jersey to kill them first.
Right. Exactly. I get it. Definitely. This is actually a question from the Connecticut Mises guys. I had reached out to them, see if they wanted me to ask you anything. And they wanted to know if there's any possibility that any of this stuff, any of this collapse kind of happened maybe a little bit nefariously. Was this withdrawal maybe...
I'm sorry, if it happened what?
Nefariously. Like, was the withdrawal maybe sabotage in some sort of way? Maybe the military-industrial complex, they were salty about ending this war. So they kind of let it happen a little bit sloppy, leaving behind, caches of money. So there'd be some blowback, justification for future incursions, stuff like that. No,
well, listen, let me ask you, remind me again about the caches of money thing, because I want to ask you about that in a second. But
sure.
Overall, I think I stick by my previous answer that this is, yes, it's the general's fault for, their role in convincing Biden to delay the withdrawal. Right. And for slow walking the withdrawal. They've known for a year and a half. Trump signed a deal with the Taliban a year and a half ago, February 29th, 2020. And so they've had all the time in the world to prepare for this. But like I say, there's a bit of a bluff there. We have to leave the Afghan army with all these weapons. If we take their weapons away, we get blamed for undermining.
How could they fight back if they weren't given any weapons? I understand.
And we have to leave our staff at the embassy as a show of confidence in the government. Otherwise, if we pull all our staff out now, we get the blame for undermining the government just by pulling our troops out. Because that's a huge symbol of no confidence in their continued ability to rule. So we get blamed for the collapse if we pull out too quick. Again, my idea is just tell the truth and do the right thing, and then you don't get stuck in these situations.
Right.
You have to manage a narrative and end up doing the wrong thing for the sake of the narrative.
Politicians tell the truth. You are asking for a lot. Let's put it that way.
I'm just saying that honesty's the best policy, man. The truth will set you free and all of that kind of stuff. Now, what is all this about leaving behind the pallets of money? Because, I interviewed Dave earlier and I forgot to ask him about this. And somebody else asked me about this.
Sure.
That there was pallets of money, but I couldn't get a straight answer where they were left behind. I think you, like my previous questioner, implied that they found pallets of money at American military bases, or where?
I believe so. Yeah. I'm not 100% familiar with the exact location. I'll be honest with you. Where I have seen it is people are posting videos on social media of specifically like Snapchat videos where you can go to a location where there's a hot spot of Snapchat activity. And when you click there, you'll see people in, let's say, Kabul. They've posted videos of them with like piles of cash that they've taken out. And it's like around areas where obviously there was American military.
And that sounds probably like the government that America passes out to all of their quislings.
Right.
Their monthly allowance.
Kind of just the way I'm seeing is maybe it's just spoils of war. Stuff gets left behind. People move in.
And that's the other thing. It could be corrupt Kabul officials who had just saved up all that money and then they had to skip town and weren't able to bring it with them.
Or they weren't able to do what President did.
Listen, I'm telling you, man, there's never been anything as corrupt in the world as the Kabul government under American rule. Other than maybe the Baghdad government under American rule. And what's that tell you about Washington, D.C., man? But they just done nothing but dump trillion. Well, yeah, literally spent $2 trillion on the war. And, some substantial percentage of that.
Yeah, I've always seen it as like a
aid money.
giant money laundering wealth
Yep.
transfer scheme overall. And of course,
And
people
just-
on that side are also going to get rich, people in positions of
right.
power.
Yeah, paying people. We're picking winners and losers, and we don't even know who these people are, but a lot of them are very bad dudes, that America's been empowering all of this time. I encourage people if that I have quite a bit of this in my book, Fool's Errand, but if you want to save the $10 on sale now.
Okay.
If you want to save the $10, just go to the Washington Post, type in the Afghan papers. And what happened was in December of 2019, the Washington Post published what had been secret interviews by the Afghanistan War Inspector General. He's called the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, Cigar with an S, Cigar. And the guy's name is John Sopko. And so what he did was he and his staff interviewed, or it's like 400 interviews with different levels of people involved in the Afghan war, all different kinds of military officers and government officials in the Bush and Obama White Houses and National Security Council, and on and on and on forever. The war czar, Douglas Lute, and all the generals. And a lot of them just give a bunch of pablum and spin, but a lot of them speak very candidly because they're under the impression that this is all secret. And the people are never going to be able to know about this, but this is for the government's official internal history so that they can know what really happened in the Afghan war. Somebody's got to.
That's a good point, right? Yeah. They need to have some official documentation of exactly what happened.
This happened in Vietnam.
Otherwise they're going to be drinking the Kool-Aid themselves.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. They got to keep straight what their lie is. Otherwise,
right. Somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this happened in Vietnam too. That's why it's called the Afghanistan Papers, is because that's a takeoff on the Pentagon Papers, which is a different scenario. It's not exactly the same, but it was a top secret history that was ordered by Robert McNamara so that he would know what was the real history of the Vietnam War, because all they ever did was lie about it. And he needed to know, what are we really doing? What all is going on here? And when Daniel Ellsberg and Leslie Gelb and others wrote up this secret history, the Pentagon Papers, Ellsberg ended up leaking it to the New York Times and other papers. And Senator Mike Gravel read it on the Senate floor in order to get this out to the American people, that they were lying all along, and they knew they were lying all along. And all along is a long time. And a lot of dead bodies ago, and absolutely unforgivable, dishonesty and administration of what is ostensibly a democracy and a constitutional law-bound republic and all of this stuff. And so then the Afghanistan Papers is the same thing. It's a secret history where people told the truth. It's not the same thing in form. It's just interviews, but it's people telling the truth when they think it's going to be secret. And admitting that they knew this country is so corrupt. These people speak all different languages, and these are bad lands. And it's a giant country. It's the size of Texas, which I don't know if you've ever been to Texas. There's a reason people joke about how Texas is so big. Texas is really big.
Yep.
Okay. It's incredibly big. In fact, I'll tell you this. I found this out when I moved to LA one day. You drive from Austin, which is a little bit east of the center of Texas, but more or less in the center of Texas. You drive from Austin to El Paso, that's on the west edge, that's halfway to the ocean.
Right. That's how big Texas is.
So New Mexico, Arizona, and all of California,
the other half,
are only as thick as half of Texas is.
Right.
Okay. That's how big Texas is. It's freaking big, man. If you've driven across it, forget about it, man. I mean, driving from Austin to Dallas is not so bad, but try driving from Corpus to Lubbock. Are you kidding me? That's how big Afghanistan is. It's huge, and it's badlands, deep mountain valleys and high mountain ranges, deserts, and a warrior culture and population that likes to fight, don't like giving in to anybody. And
one thing I understand is that they don't have a very strong central nationality or sense of nationality.
Right. Of course not.
And
Absolutely not.
that's contributed to the problem, which it makes me wonder, why do they even consider that region a country? That maybe they should break off into smaller countries.
I'm not sure when that border was drawn.
Right.
I mean, I know that, a lot of these people still refer to at least most of it as Khorasan, which was an ancient eastern province of the Persian Empire back when.
Okay.
But, you lost me there, man. I don't know all the ancient history.
Me neither. I'm no expert in Afghani ancient history.
No, I think there is some Afghani nationalism and patriotism. It's been a nation state long enough that people do consider themselves Afghans, but they also consider themselves Muslims, and they consider themselves Pashtuns and Tajiks and Uzbeks and Hazaras. The Hazaras are Shiites.
Okay.
And then, in the north of the country, they speak primarily Urdu and Dari. And in the south, they speak Pashto, of course. But then I saw, there's a clip of this guy who wrote about the Pech Valley. I'm sorry, the guy's name has escaped me. I have his book here. I've been trying to get to it. Where'd it go? Oh, here. Forgive me. Wesley Morgan, The Hardest Place.
Okay.
And he's talking about up there in the Pech Valley where oh yeah, and actually they got about 5 more languages up there from valley to valley to valley. And he says in this clip, you can find it on my Twitter feed. It's the Book TV thing on my Twitter feed where there's a clip of me in there because they interviewed me for Book TV, but they also interviewed this other guy. And he names these languages you've never heard of. And he goes, yeah, in this valley, there's this one valley where they speak this language. It's the only valley in the world where they speak it. And I've heard other people before describe that as different dialects from valley to valley to valley. But this,
that's what I'm thinking back in my mind. I'm thinking,
languages.
trying to relate it to Italy and how Italy speaks different dialects in different areas.
But this is more severe differences even than that.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? You could really call this valley its own little sovereign, not even city state,
territory,
village
country,
state.
village. Yeah.
Its own little village nation, its own little Indian nation, basically, right? Its own little native, Why mess with these people, man?
Yeah.
This is the real tragedy of the war. It is, and this has been going on all along. We've known this since, I think it was still in the Bush years when they did a poll. It said 92% of Afghans had never even heard of the September 11th attacks, right? So, if you're a critic, you go, man, how can we be at war with people when they don't even have
anything about it?
Clue why we're even there?
They're very isolated people, right? They didn't have access to technology and newspaper.
They've never even heard of the New World before. Many of them, out in the countryside, they never even heard of America. They don't know anything about this stuff. They've probably never heard of Persia, and yet, so the Hawk side of that is, but we're not fighting. We're not punishing them for 9/11. We're helping them by building a wonderful new democracy and all this stuff for them. So then any amount of violence that we mete out to these people sure must seem like punishment to them. And we're punishing them for something that they don't even know what it is. And I talked to this guy. I love this quote. It's in the most recent book. I got it just earlier or late last year, I guess, from Frank Ledwidge. And he is a guy who was a British Marine intelligence officer stationed in the Helmand province during the surge. And he told me a story about how he had to explain to this local Pashtun villager in the Helmand province who's asking him, why are you guys here? Brits and American Marines and American soldiers. Why are you guys here? And Frank tells him, well, 10 years ago, because this story was 10 years ago, 10 years ago, some Arabs crashed a plane into a building, into a village called New York, in a valley far away from here. And then the guy says to him, yeah, what in the hell does that have to do with me?
Right. I can only imagine.
With us.
He's shocked, right? The repercussions of that. What does it have to do with us?
But the joke there is even how he had to explain it.
Yeah.
A village.
Yeah. Put in
perspective
for him. Right.
Hey, pardon me. New York has been the most important city in the world since at least between the world wars. This guy's never heard of New York before.
Right.
A village. He's never heard of a city before. A village called New York.
Yet we've been occupying his country. Right. Yet we've been occupying his country and fighting a war there for 20.
We're killing his neighbors there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, yeah, no, it's ugly as hell, man. And,
Yep.
you know, in the book, I cite numerous war crimes, incidental and accidental, from Bush and Obama years, going through the wars, just unavoidable. I mean, I wrote the book. The book came out 6 months into Trump, so it covers his escalation. But,
Okay.
you know, the war is Bush and Obama's before that. But when people just die all the time. You know, here's like a simple one, right? A soldier told me this on the show. Army soldier. We're searching this guy's house, and a guy across the street pokes his head around the corner of his house to see what's going on. And the guy I'm talking to, he knows the language. So he goes to say to the guy, U.S. soldiers, get back. We're not here for you. Stay back, whatever. But before he can say a word, his buddy shoots the guy dead.
Wow.
Right. And then you have that just happens over and over and over again for 20 years. See?
Or you're building
20
animosity
years.
that way towards your mission.
Yeah. They're killing people.
Right.
And look, man, you know, well, I don't want to be too specific, but I've had family members die before in my life, and it really, really, really was horrible. But none of them were exploded to death.
Right. Murdered by an occupying force.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine somebody explodes your auntie to death?
Right.
The kind of wrath that would draw out of you.
Yep.
What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to lie there and take it because we're doing this for their own good.
It's understandable, of course. You know, it doesn't make, you know, one eye for the other doesn't make it right, but it's understandable. You know, I think back to what Ron Paul said about blowback.
Right.
You know, that's been my whole problem behind this entire war.
Look, bin Laden said 25 years ago or something, bin Laden said, oh, so I get it. You think your blood is blood, but our blood is just water. Right. Well, we're going to kill a bunch of you and show you how badly we reject that premise. How do you like that?
Yeah, I get it.
Pretty clear, you know?
Let me ask you another question. This one's actually from my co-host, Chris, who couldn't make it today. He's at work. And this is going to be regarding China, which I'm sure you've gotten this question a million times.
Sure. Go ahead.
And his question is the withdrawal going to lead to China getting involved in Afghanistan? Because there's a lot of precious metals there, resources. And
good luck to them.
Yeah, I know. That's my opinion, but I'm trying to frame the question from like the conservative point of view. That
look,
you know, the conservatives are ringing the alarm. Yeah, they're ringing the alarm bells about how is this going to look to our allies in Taiwan, that we won't be able to defend them. I do think the Chinese Party said that the other day. So what's your opinion on
listen,
that? Yeah.
Any Taiwanese listening now, we're not coming to save you. And you need to get that through your thick skulls now. And that's just true. You think America's going to go to a nuclear war to save Taiwan?
Yeah,
they're not.
Yeah.
Look, for 50 years, our position on Taiwan, since Nixon, for 48 years, our policy has been that, yes, there's one China and its government, its rightful government is in Beijing, and that includes Taiwan, but we oppose reunification by force.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not promising we would do anything about it.
Yes, but I'm not sure where that even comes from. It seems like that's just a war hawk attitude, right?
Yeah, that's where, look, Nixon made peace with Mao Zedong.
Mm-hmm. Nixon
said, you know, I just read a great article about this last week. God, I wish I could remember as well as I could when I was younger. Where Nixon had a piece of paper and he wrote what they want, what we want. And then he went down the list of all of these things. Mm-hmm. And he said, the Chinese want recognition that Taiwan really belongs to them, even if they can't actually have it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give them that. Taiwan is not an American national interest at all. Makes no difference to the American people who rules Taiwan. Nobody wants to see a bunch of people killed in a violent transfer of power as the Chinese conquer the thing, but for simple humanitarian reasons. But speaking as the USA makes no difference at all.
Yeah. Is this something we want to Taiwan? Right. Is there something we'd want to risk a nuclear war, maybe, or the detonation of a couple of nukes?
Absolutely not.
Right, of course.
Absolutely not. And the war party in America would like you to think that there's some option for a massive conventional war against China short of nukes, but there's not.
Yeah, I don't
They
see
have
that either.
sea-skimming, supersonic sea-skimming missiles that can sink our ships. And when they run the drills, the red team wins. The American Navy sinks to the bottom of the Pacific in a fight over Taiwan.
The thing with
And
that
why
also,
would we do that?
That's all the way on their side of the world too. I could see
Let me
if
ask you this way.
it was Long
Here's how
Island or
Pat
something, but
Here's how Buchanan put it. Pat Buchanan years ago, he says, okay, well, what if they roll into Outer Mongolia? We're going to go to war for the independence of Outer Mongolia
right.
to defend the sovereignty of Mongolia? Or are the American people going to finally recognize that, you know what, not every damn thing in the world is your business or your call?
Yeah, it seems similar to like
China
the
going to
strategy.
Afghanistan. China ain't going to Afghanistan. You think they just saw what the Russians and the Americans did to themselves in Afghanistan and are now lining up to do it to themselves too?
I hope they do. Right. I hope they get stuck in the quagmire themselves.
No, I don't. That's terrible. But look, the point is they're not dumb enough.
Mhm.
They're not nearly as stupid as the Americans to do such a stupid thing as we've just done to ourselves there. If they're sending anybody to Afghanistan, they're sending little guys with briefcases full of won to, try to bribe the Taliban into helping them, as you mentioned, mine those minerals or whatever it is. But let me tell you something. There's a reason that there's not a single railroad in Afghanistan. Not one.
What's that?
Because the security situation will not allow for it.
It's hard to extract those minerals, even if you can't even build the infrastructure.
There. That's right. Not even a national government like the U.S. government. For all the money it wasted there, they did very small mining projects. But they did nothing like, hey, let's develop the mineral wealth of Afghanistan. Because it's absolutely impossible to do so without highways and trucks and railroads and massive multi-billion-dollar investments in infrastructure that are going to be maintained and supported over long periods of time in order to pay for themselves and make profits out into the future. And you just can't find the wildest adventure capitalists in the world who are willing to put up their money for such a thing. And you can't even get national governments to put up money for such a thing. Now, if that's going to happen, it'll be on a very small scale. But, the amount of infrastructure that would have to be built to get away with any, like I think all the lithium's down in the Helmand province or whatever. How's China going to get all of that stuff to China? Is
there not also the issue regarding China and the Uyghur population? Aren't they a similar, branch of Muslim that the Taliban are? So I don't see how that's like a natural. I mean, I could be wrong.
No, that's right. Look, the Chinese just asked the Taliban a week and a half ago or something like, hey, you guys, they didn't say we want your minerals. We want to do business. They said, look, we just want you guys to keep the East Turkestan Islamic movement down, which is this Uyghur militia that the Taliban have been allied with, and that the U.S. bombed the both of them together back in 2018. Look at a map of Afghanistan. I'm sorry, I always forget the name of it. If you look at a map of Afghanistan, in the northeast, there's this one small valley that branches way off to the northeast and borders China.
Right.
And it like cuts between Kyrgyzstan and Pakistan there. And so like they might be able to build up some mining concerns there or whatever, but I don't think they're going to go much further than that. And that was where the Uyghurs were training with the Taliban, where the Americans had bombed them. Okay. So that's actually my worst fear about the future of intervention in Afghanistan, is that America's going to ally with the Taliban to back the East Turkestan Islamic movement of Uyghur separatists in order to potentially use them against China.
Like a buffer, right?
China.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, something like that too.
That's how it was in the late 90s under Bill Clinton and even early W. Bush. Eric Margulies just told me earlier this week, he saw Uyghurs being trained by the Pakistani ISI in Afghanistan in the summer of 2001, even, in just a month or 2 months before the September 11th attack.
It's not like it's never happened either. Weren't we allied also with the Taliban against ISIS and that whole fight?
Well, America was first allied with the Taliban in the 1990s under
That
Bill
too.
Clinton in their rise to
Right.
power. And after they turned on them, they turned on these Uyghurs too. The Uyghurs ended up in Guantanamo Bay. And we fought the Taliban for the last, 15 years. They really came back about 2004, 2005. We fought them the last 15 years. And then 1 year ago, America then allied with the Taliban
Right.
against ISIS. And JSOC in the Washington Post called JSOC the Taliban's Air Force. And that's what they call themselves, the Taliban's Air Force,
Yep.
as
I
they're
remember.
flying for the Taliban, killing Islamic State fighters. But that's personal. And really, I don't know. I think they could get along with the Islamic State fighters if they wanted to. There's a lot of bad blood there, but I think whatever really ever amounted to ISIS in Afghanistan has really been destroyed by now anyway.
Gotcha.
Not much left of that anyway. But I think that there's a real risk that the CIA might try to align with the Taliban to support these Uyghurs against China. And that's the kind of thing where, we're just being sore losers at this point. The reality is America has no strategic interest in Afghanistan at all. Hell, if it doesn't really affect our national interest who rules Taiwan, then it sure as hell doesn't affect our national interest who rules Afghanistan.
It affects our
Just
financial interests, though, I guess
Yeah.
you could say, or how to line the pockets. That's
But see,
always my
as
opinion. of it.
Garrett said, listen, as Garrett Garrett said that, in the American empire, everything goes out and nothing comes back. So in other words, we're not in Afghanistan to steal all their lithium. We're in Afghanistan because Lockheed makes money selling
Right.
planes to the American people. We're the treasure being extracted.
Yes, exactly.
Right,
We're not getting
just-
any return on that investment.
and getting
Lockheed
nothing back for it at all.
Raytheon,
That's-
et cetera. They're the
that's
ones
right.
who are.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so
Good.
what a humiliating end to the American
It is.
Republican experiment, man. They blew it. It's just like, have you ever read the book of the original Star Wars movie?
I never read the book.
Probably
No, I've watched
So-
the movie a million times, but never the book.
In the book, there's the preface to the book goes back to the old days, and says, there was once this mighty galactic old republic,
The Old Republic.
and like a mighty oak tree, it was impervious from assault from the outside, from external assault, but it rotted from within, from corruption, because the republic was so strong it guaranteed freedom, and with that freedom came prosperity, and with that prosperity came greed and corruption, and ruined everything and tore the whole thing down. And honestly, man, it's been my mantra since 2001.
It's like a fourth turning
2002. Empire.
prophecy within Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the whole story is about America anyway, right? He's an American.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
And then, but yeah, so that's the deal, man. Empires murder suicide. So in the 1990s, I thought the American empire was the evil New World Order, one world government conspiracy. This is the only way to destroy America, is make it overextend itself and destroy itself. But that wasn't right. That was all a bunch of crap. But then guess what? Guess whose plot it was to destroy America by making it overextend itself and destroy itself?
The American
Bin
government.
Laden's.
Yeah. Okay.
It was the terrorists. Give us the excuse to drive our own empire over the cliff.
Yeah.
And then
It's
that's
funny
exactly
because
what they done.
I remember back then being a kid, the excuse or the thing people were saying was, they hate our freedom. They're jealous of our freedom. That's why they did this to us. But now when 20 years later, let's compare it now. Could you say we're more free than the
It's on the
Taliban?
books right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Those two books right there have all you need on it. And I'm sorry, because that's the top of the hour and I got to run because I got another interview.
But listen, man, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it, even though Chris couldn't be here. I know you're busy, so I'll let you
Tell
know.
them hi.
I will.
Well,
Thanks.
Yeah, no, listen, I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thanks, Scott. Take it easy.
All right, talk again soon. Bye.
Bye.